Hi, welcome. I hope you're having a good day wherever and whenever you are. I am Lobna Hassan. I am an associate professor at LUT University and I research game inclusion accessibility as well as gamification and virtual reality. If you want to know more about my research, head on to my website and feel free to email me as well. Now, what I'm here to talk about is disability representation in games, and I'm hoping to show you some of the current stereotypes that we see of disability in games, why that is problematic, as well as provide you with some thoughts for how this can be improved in the future. Now, Shell in 2021 did an analysis of game trailers, and they found out that from 108 trailers, only 20 featured characters with disabilities. 15 were main characters and 10 were playable. I don't know about you, but for me this is a very small number of characters. It remains that representation is lacking. It's disproportionate to how many people with disabilities we have, which is 1.3 billion people with disabilities globally. This is a large and significant number. In comparison, the representation in games should be large and significant as well. But not only is the number of characters of disabilities small, but they tend to be problematic characters. It appears that they usually represent the negative in our humanity. If you want to show that a character has some sort of struggle with their identity or with their performance, or they would like to be something that they are not, then usually one of the easiest shortcuts we see, not just in games, but in literature, in media, is to show that this character is struggling with a disability. There has been a lot of effort to change that, specifically with the increase in society's understanding of inclusion and diversity, but it remains that there's a lot more that could be done. What I'm gonna do now is that I'm gonna show you some of the current stereotypes that exist in games, and we're gonna break them down together and discuss why they are not the best representations or are actually inaccurate representations that are harmful. So starting with the first, let me move myself here. Disability in games tend to be used as quick and easy, or in other words, a lazy way to build stories and characters without investing time in building a story. If you are familiar with role-playing games or with any kind of game that has lore around it, there are usually backstories for the characters. In a game such as, for example, The Last of Us, this is one of the main characters, Nathan, and I'm gonna try not to tell you a lot about him, not to spoil the game, but in one of the scenes, for a very good reason, you need to search Nathan's room, and while searching Nathan's room, you come across prescription pills, and you come across a note from Nathan's doctor telling Nathan's father that Nathan is going to a dark place, in summary. Nathan is not exactly a good character in the story, but rather than the game telling us more about Nathan or his relationship with other in-game characters, the game simply tells us that Nathan is mentally unwell. This does not help anyone with mental illness. It continues to show us that people who have depression, schizophrenia, anxiety are bad characters, when in fact we have so many statistics showing that people with mental illness are more likely to be victims than perpetrators of any sort of crime or harm to another human being. The second way we see characters with disabilities is as monsters. There are so many reasons for a character to be evil and to become a monster even, but it seems that whenever there is a need to create a monster, again, without providing this backstory, developers would go towards representing the monster as disabled. The Last of Us 2 has been specially praised for its accessibility settings, yet when you play the game, you come across characters like this. The one explanation for why this monster looks the way they are is because they have been infected with something that made them go blind and have made them become fat and ugly and look like that. Of course, in The Last of Us, we are talking about zombie-like creatures here, so it does make sense in the context of the story, but this is an issue because losing your ability should not be connected with becoming a monster, because this is something that we're all likely to experience at some point or not in our life. It is part of being human. However, something like Dead Space, we see Isaac going through a spaceship, and basically every encounter he has is with monsters. Here, Isaac is the human, is humanity, and he's fighting the monstrosity, deformity, looking different, having any kind of difference from what Isaac is. It is a subtle message. You can agree or disagree with me about it, but you don't see the opposite being communicated. You don't see a character that, for example, has one leg, but they are the superhero. This is where the imbalance is problematic. Thirdly, you can make players feel very remarkable and very good about themselves because they are nice to another character in game with a disability. This is often seen in movies by the scene when there is someone who's blind, and then the main character in the movie comes and they help them cross the road, and then we immediately see this main character as a hero, or this is at least what the movie tries to tell us. This does not happen in real life. If someone is blind, they have learned how to use their cane, or they have a personal assistant, or they use a guide dog. In most of the cases, of course, I'm making gross generalizations here, but it is very rare that this situation actually happens in real life. And so it's not only that we are creating artificial moments, but they perpetuate the idea that if you find someone with a disability on the street, go help them, because God forbid this person is not there on their own doing anything independently. There is one study that reported on people using wheelchairs playing Pokemon Go and then being approached by so many people so often asking them if they need help, if they are lost, so much so that people have given up on playing Pokemon Go altogether, because we keep reinforcing this idea that if you see someone disabled, this is what you're supposed to do. Finally, we see characters with disability also as heroes. It's a very easy way to say that this character is remarkable because they have a disability, and in spite of that disability, they are so amazing. This narrative is very basically the core idea of Daredevil, a superhero who's blind and uses their hearing to fight crime. And this is an issue because to this day, there are people who have a very strong assumption that once you're blind, your hearing is supernatural. And while there is a ground of truth to that, it is accurate that you compensate with your hearing for your eyesight. It is not to the extent of fighting crimes. It is not to the extent of having radar vision that can visualize to you everything that is around you. If the issue with this is that we deprive people of their independence, then the issue with that is that we do the opposite. We say, oh, people with disabilities absolutely do not need any help at all. They are superheroes. They're wonderful. And both extremes are wrong. We need to be somewhere in the middle ground where we understand that disability does require some help and accommodations, but not to the extent of being fully dependent on someone. In games, we see this in the form of super crypts most often. So the last point and the last 2 points are sort of connected, because here I also want to talk about body augmentation as inspiration. This is Wolf in Sakire, and he has a super weapon arm, like a bionic arm type of thing, like a prosthesis. When he has this arm on, he has superpower. And so this combines both. This creates a fetish. You do have young people who fetishize prostheses and who wish to have a bionic arm or a bionic leg, and it is a gross misrepresentation, misunderstanding of what these augmentations are and their state nowadays in society and in technology. We also see that this person with this disability is a superhero because of their disability, because now they have this super arm that can do anything. Another example is Carolina Becker from Wolfenstein, and she uses a wheelchair, but she also has this fighting suit that when she puts it on, she becomes a totally powerful character who can walk and fight and do whatever they want. And if you can look at the facial expression between the two characters, you can see that the kind of emotionality that the game wants you to communicate about how Carolina feels when she's using the wheelchair and how empowered she feels when she has the suit on. So here also we have the idea that a person with a disability cannot be accepted unless they triumph over their disability. That disability needs to be broken, needs to be remedied, needs to be gotten away or taken away, or whatever the English expression is. This is also not true, because not all disabilities can be remedied. In fact, most of them cannot be remedied. This celebration of characters triumphant over disabilities not only creates young disabled people who keep dreaming about the day that they could walk in vain, but it also creates pressure from society. We need to show in games, in media, everywhere, that characters can have disabilities and still be superheroes, still be soldiers, be whatever it is, with this disability present, rather than it being remedied or triumphed upon. All of these stereotypes, they kind of assume that the gamer is someone without a disability. They do not expect that the gamer is using a wheelchair themselves, because I would see it more problematic if we assume that the gamer has a disability and we're even trying to make them feel worse about it. So what I'm here to ask is, are gamers really able? All of them. A third of gamers experience a disability at some point in their life, or permanently. So disabilities are not just something that we are either born or not born with. It's something that we can acquire due to accidents, aging. That's partially why this number 1/3 is malleable, because the state of disability does change a lot. Also, disclosure of disability does change a lot, because nowadays gamers with disabilities tend to not disclose their disability for fears of cyberbullying and such negativity. So for many reasons, we don't have an accurate estimation of how many gamers play with a disability, but it is a significant number. We need to start building more authentic characters that help change society's attitude towards disability. This is something that the game The War of Us does relatively well. In this game, you can see characters that have weaknesses and strength at the same time. To make this more concrete, I'll show you these sets of characters. So the first one is a math professor. However, the running speed is slow. Yes, we can see some limitation being placed on this character, but also some strength in the sense of them being smart. And we could do that with someone who's using a wheelchair, for example, in a game, but they could have a strong sense of humor, or they could be wise and guide other people, or they could be a computer whiz, whatever it is. Rather than this character, they are just disabled, and this is it. This is the one defining aspect of them. To arrive at maybe better balanced characters, what we need to do is basically to educate ourselves more on disability and to see more examples of real people with disabilities and what they're like, because if we actually see them, then we can actually see that they are complex and they are more than just disability. Building on these real characters, it would actually lead to more complex characters that we would enjoy more, rather than simple characters that do not allow us to build characters in our heads and imaginations and different realities. We should understand that also disability is subjective, situational, relative, and also complex, in the sense that not everyone who uses, for example, a wheelchair only uses a wheelchair all the time. They can sometimes walk for short amounts of time. They can maybe stand but not walk. There are different variations. And so these are my recommendations. The rest of the speakers in our panel, they do have different reimaginations of what the future with disability could look like. And I personally, sincerely look forward to that. So I thank you for listening to this talk, and I hope to hear more from you during the panel discussion and also through email. Bye.